A server's nightmare becomes destiny's designed crystal chandeliers of the Palmer House Hilton sparkled like captured stars above the crowded ballroom. Violet Monroe weaved through clusters of Chicago's elite, balancing a tray of champagne flutes with practiced grace. Her black server's uniform felt suffocating compared to the flowing costumes she wore during ballet performances. But those gigs had dried up months ago. Tonight, she was just another invisible face serving the wealthy at their exclusive charity gala. The moment everything changed, Violet's feet ached in the sensible black shoes required for service staff. She longed for her ballet slippers, for the freedom of movement and expression that dance provided. As she approached a group of suited executives near the auction display, she mentally calculated how many more hours until she could return to her cramped apartment and ice her chronically injured ankle. The medical bills from her mother's recent stroke had piled up faster than she could count, forcing her to take any work available. When power meets grace, Harrison Blake stood apart from the crowd, his presence commanding attention without effort. At 34, he had built Blake Technologies from a college startup into a multi-billion-dollar empire. Tonight's gala was merely another obligation, another event where people wanted his money and connections. He checked his watch discreetly, calculating how soon he could leave without offending the organizers. Business mergers waited for no one, and he had a crucial deal closing in Tokyo within 48 hours. The accidental encounter Violet never saw the designer handbag that someone carelessly left near the auction table. Her foot caught the strap, and she stumbled forward, her tray of champagne glasses flying through the air in what felt like slow motion. Time seemed to freeze as the golden liquid arced through the air, catching the light before splashing across an expensive charcoal suit. The glasses shattered against marble floor with a sound that silenced the nearby conversations. A different kind of response horror flooded through Violet as she realized what had happened. The man she had drenched stood perfectly still, champagne dripping from his jacket and shirt. She expected rage, dismissal, perhaps even termination on the spot. Instead, Harrison Blake looked down at his ruined suit and did something completely unexpected. He laughed, not a polite chuckle, but a genuine, deep laugh that transformed his stern features into something warm and human. Beyond the surface. "I'm so sorry," Violet stammered, frantically dabbing at his jacket with the small towel from her tray. Tears of embarrassment threatened to spill from her eyes. "Please, I'll pay for the dry cleaning. I'll pay for everything." Her hands shook. She realized this suit probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. Harrison gently caught her wrists, stopping her frantic movements. "It's just a suit," he said softly, his grey eyes meeting hers with unexpected kindness. "Are you hurt? You took quite a fall." Seeing what others, Miss Violet blinked in surprise. No one at these events ever asked if she was okay. To the wealthy guests, servers were practically invisible, mere providers of convenience. But this man looked at her like she actually mattered, like she was a person rather than just staff. "I'm fine," she managed, acutely aware of his hands still holding her wrists. His touch was warm and gentle, completely at odds with the powerful aura he projected. "But your suit and your meeting." The unexpected invitation. Harrison released her wrists, but continued to study her face with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. There was something about this woman that intrigued him. Her posture spoke of discipline and grace despite her obvious embarrassment. Her hands, though rough from work, moved with an elegance that suggested artistic training. "What's your name?" he asked, ignoring the curious stares from nearby guests. "Violet Monroe," she whispered. "And I really am sorry about your suit, Mr. Blake." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You know who I am." "A glimpse of truth. Everyone knows who you are," Violet said, finally meeting his gaze fully. "You're Harrison Blake, founder of Blake Technologies. You're on the cover of Forbes every other month." A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "And yet you're the first person tonight who's treated me like a human being other than a walking checkbook." The honesty in his voice surprised them both. Around them, the gala continued, but in that moment, they existed in a bubble separate from the glittering crowd. When World's Pulse catering manager rushed over, his face flushed with panic. "Miss Monroe, you're terminated immediately. Mr. Blake, please accept our sincere apologies." But Harrison held up his hand, his expression hardening into the commanding presence that had built his empire. "She stays. In fact, she's no longer working this event. She's my guest." The manager's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Violet felt dizzy with confusion. "Mr. Blake, I can't. I need this job." The proposition that changes everything. Harrison pulled out his phone and typed quickly. "Your wages for tonight will be covered, plus a bonus for the inconvenience. Now, would you do me the honor of having dinner with me tomorrow evening? I'd like to apologize properly for causing you to lose your job, even temporarily." Violet knew she should refuse. Men like Harrison Blake lived in a different universe from people like her, but there was something in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored her own, that made her hesitate. "Why?" she asked simply. The truth in his eyes. Harrison considered her question carefully. Why indeed? He could have anyone he wanted, women who moved in his circles and understood his world. But this woman with champagne-stained hands and vulnerability in her eyes sparked something he thought had died years ago. Curiosity, interest, genuine desire to know someone beyond their usefulness to his empire. "Because in 5 years of attending these events, you're the first person who's made me laugh," he said truthfully. "And I'd like to know who you are when you're not serving champagne to people who don't deserve your grace." The decision that launches Destiny. Violet's heart hammered against her ribs. Every practical instinct screamed this was dangerous. Men like Harrison Blake collected beautiful things and discarded them when novelty faded. But there was something magnetic about him, something that made her want to take a risk for once in her carefully controlled life. "One dinner," she heard herself say. "Just one." Harrison's smile could have lit the entire ballroom. "One dinner," he agreed, though they both somehow knew it wouldn't end there. As he walked away to change his champagne-soaked suit, Violet stood among the broken glass and curious stares, wondering if she had just made the best or worst decision of her life. When business meets emotions, restaurant Harrison chose was the kind of place Violet had only read about in lifestyle magazines. Alinea occupied a converted brownstone in Lincoln Park, where meals were culinary theater and reservations required months of planning. As she stepped through the door in her only decent dress, a simple navy blue chic she had worn to auditions, Violet felt the weight of luxury pressing down on her. Harrison stood waiting near the entrance, devastating in a charcoal grey suit that probably replaced the one she had ruined. His face lit up when he saw her, and that genuine smile eased some of her nervousness, unveiling hidden depths. "You look beautiful," Harrison said, offering his arm. The gesture felt old-fashioned and oddly comforting. As they were led to a private dining room, Violet noticed how the staff treated him with respectful familiarity. He came here often, she realized, but the way he pulled out her chair and asked about her preferences suggested this evening mattered differently to him. "Tell me about yourself, Violet Monroe," he said once they were alone. "And please, not the rehearsed elevator pitch. Tell me something real. The story behind the struggle." Violet wrapped her fingers around her water glass, gathering courage. Most people did not want real. They wanted polished versions, acceptable narratives. But something about Harrison's direct gaze made her want to be honest. "I was supposed to be a principal dancer with the Joffrey Ballet," she began quietly. "I trained since I was 5 years old. Dance was everything, my entire identity, my future. Then during rehearsals last year, I landed wrong from a grand jeet. Torn ligaments, damaged cartilage, the kind of injury that ends careers." Understanding beyond words, Harrison listened without the pity she usually saw when sharing her story. Instead, his expression held something deeper, recognition perhaps of dreams derailed by circumstances beyond control. "That's why you're serving at galas instead of performing at them," he said softly. It was not a question. Violet nodded, surprised by the tightness in her throat. "My mother had a stroke 3 months after my injury. Someone had to pay the medical bills, keep our apartment, so I take whatever work I can find. Catering, retail, sometimes teaching basic ballet to children. It's not the life I imagined, but it's honest work." When honesty creates connection via food arrived in artistic arrangements that looked too beautiful to eat. But as they shared the meal, conversation flowed with surprising ease. Violet found herself laughing at Harrison's dry observations about corporate culture. He seemed genuinely fascinated by her descriptions of dance, the discipline and artistry required. Hours passed like minutes, the private dining room becoming a world unto itself. When dessert arrived, a stunning chocolate sculpture with edible flowers, Harrison's expression shifted to something more serious. The business arrangement. Violet, I need to be honest with you about something, Harrison began, setting down his fork. I didn't invite you to dinner solely because I enjoyed our conversation last night. I have a proposition for you, and I need you to hear me out before you respond. Violet's stomach tightened with disappointment. Of course, there was an ulterior motive. Men like Harrison Blake did not pursue women like her without reason. What kind of proposition? She asked, keeping her voice neutral despite the hurt blooming in her chest. The 6-month contract. Harrison pulled out a leather folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. I'm in the process of finalizing a merger with Tanaka Industries, a Japanese conglomerate. It's the biggest deal of my career, worth over $3 billion. But there's a complication. Hiroshi Tanaka is extremely traditional. He believes in family values, stable relationships. He's refused to do business with me because he thinks I'm a playboy who lacks commitment. Violet stared at him, not understanding where this was leading. The shocking request, I need someone to pose as my partner. Harrison continued, his grey eyes locked on hers. Someone genuine, someone real who can convince Tanaka that I'm capable of commitment and stability. I'm offering you a 6-month contract. You'll accompany me to business dinners, social events, and 1 trip to Tokyo. In exchange, I'll pay you $500,000, cover all your mother's medical expenses, and fund any corrective surgery you need for your ankle. The numbers made Violet's head spin. That kind of money could change everything. The moral dilemma. You want me to lie? Violet said flatly, pushing the folder back toward him. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend so you can close a business deal? Harrison did not flinch from her accusation. Yes, I'm asking you to play a role, which ironically is what you trained to do as a performer, but I'm offering fair compensation for your time and discretion. This is a business transaction, Violet. Nothing more, nothing less. His words stung more than they should have. She had started to believe their connection was real. Wrestling with desperation, Violet stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I may be desperate, Mr. Blake, but I'm not for sale. Find someone else to be your pretend girlfriend. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, tears threatening to spill. Behind her, she heard Harrison stand, his voice following her. Violet, wait, please. But she did not stop until his hand gently caught her elbow in the restaurant's foyer. I handled that badly, he admitted. But my offer stands, and I think we both know you need what I'm offering. The painful truth. Violet whirled to face him, anger and hurt warring in her chest. You have no idea what I need. You think because you have money, you can buy anything, including people's integrity. Harrison's jaw tightened, but his eyes remained steady on hers. You're right. I don't know what you need, but I know what desperation looks like because I've lived it. I know what it's like to watch someone you love suffer while feeling powerless to help. Your mother needs care you can't afford. Your ankle needs surgery that's not covered by insurance. I'm offering you a solution. The weight of impossible choice. Violet felt tears spill down her cheeks. She hated that he was right. Hated that money could solve problems that love and determination could not. Why me? She whispered. You could hire an actress, someone trained for this kind of deception. Harrison's expression softened, his thumb gently wiping away her tears in a gesture that felt far too intimate for a business arrangement. Because Tanaka would see through a performance. He's built his empire on reading people. But you, Violet, you're genuine. Your emotions are real. And honestly, you're the first woman I've met in years who interests me. Negotiating the impossible if I agree, Violet said slowly, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. I have conditions. Complete transparency about what's expected. No physical intimacy beyond what's necessary for appearances, and the money goes into a trust that I can't access except for my mother's care and my surgery. I don't want to be tempted to spend it frivolously." Harrison nodded, respect flickering in his eyes. "Agreed. I'll have my lawyers draw up a contract that protects both of us. You'll have your own legal representation to review everything before you sign." The moment of surrender. They stood in the restaurant foyer, the sounds of the city filtering through the door, both aware they were about to cross a line that could not be uncrossed. "One more thing," Violet said, meeting his gaze with all the courage she could muster. "If at any point this arrangement becomes damaging to either of us emotionally, we walk away. No penalties, no recriminations. I won't sacrifice my heart for money, no matter how desperately I need it." Harrison extended his hand, a formal gesture that somehow felt momentous. "You have my word, Violet Monroe. 6 months, then you're free." Sealing the dangerous deal, Violet took his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, the strength in his fingers. As their hands clasped, she felt the trajectory of her life shift irrevocably. This was not love, this was business, but the electricity that sparked between them suggested the lines might blur dangerously over the coming months. "When do we start?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Harrison's smile held triumph and something else, something that looked almost like relief. "Tomorrow. My stylist will meet you at 10 to prepare for the Tanaka dinner tomorrow evening. Welcome to my world, Violet." The first taste of luxury of next morning, Violet stood in her tiny apartment bathroom, staring at her reflection and wondering what she had agreed to. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number containing an address in the Gold Coast neighborhood. When she arrived at the luxury boutique, a woman with impeccable style and sharp eyes introduced herself as Monica, Harrison's personal stylist. "Mr. Blake wants you to feel comfortable and confident," Monica explained, leading Violet through racks of designer clothing. "We're not trying to change you, just enhance what's already there." Transformation and identity has passed in a whirlwind of fabrics, fittings, and accessories. Violet tried on gowns that cost more than her annual income, shoes that felt like clouds, jewelry that sparkled like captured starlight. Monica had an artist's eye, selecting pieces that complemented Violet's natural grace rather than overwhelming it. "You have a dancer's posture," Monica observed. "We'll use that. Classic elegance with modern sophistication." When Violet finally saw herself in the full ensemble, emerald green silk that flowed like water and diamond earrings that caught the light, she barely recognized a woman in the mirror. The performance begins that evening. Harrison arrived at her apartment in his town car, and the look in his eyes when she opened the door made her breath catch. "You look stunning," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Thank you," Violet managed, suddenly nervous about the evening ahead. In the car, Harrison briefed her on Hiroshi Tanaka and his daughter Akiko, who would also be attending. "Be yourself," he instructed. "Tanaka respects authenticity. Just remember, we've been dating for 3 months. We met at a charity event," which is actually true. Meeting the Tanakas, the private dining room at Smythe was intimate and elegant. Hiroshi Tanaka was in his 60s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see everything. His daughter Akiko was beautiful and poised, clearly educated and accomplished. As introductions were made, Violet felt those penetrating gazes assessing her, measuring her worth. "Harrison tells me you're a dancer," Hiroshi said in perfect English. "My late wife studied ballet in her youth. What company were you with?" The question was a test, Violet realized. One wrong answer could unravel everything. The art of authentic deception. Violet met Hiroshi Tanaka's probing gaze without flinching, drawing on years of performing under pressure. "I trained with the Joffrey Ballet," she said honestly, allowing genuine emotion to color her voice. "Unfortunately, an injury ended my performing career. Now I teach and try to share the beauty of dance with the next generation." She did not mention the catering jobs or financial struggles. Some truths serve the performance better than others. Hiroshi nodded slowly, something like approval flickering in his eyes. "Resilience in the face of adversity. This is honorable." Harrison-san chose wisely, unexpected unease throughout dinner. Violet found herself genuinely enjoying Akiko's company. The younger Tanaka woman was sharp and funny, with observations about international business that made even Harrison laugh. "My father thinks I need to marry a suitable executive and produce heirs," Akiko confided when the men were discussing merger specifics. "But I want to run my own division of Tanaka Industries first." Perhaps you understand the challenge of pursuing dreams in a world that has different expectations. Violet smiled, recognizing a kindred spirit, despite their vastly different circumstances. The cracks in the facades. The evening progressed. Violet noticed something unsettling. The way Harrison's hand naturally found the small of her back felt too comfortable. The inside jokes that developed between them flowed too easily. When Hiroshi asked how they met, Harrison's version of their champagne collision made her laugh genuinely. And the look he gave her held warmth that seemed to transcend performance. This was supposed to be acting, but the lines between pretend and real were blurring dangerously fast. "A test of truth, tell me, Violet-san," Hiroshi said as dessert arrived, his tone deceptively casual. "What do you love most about Harrison?" The question hung in the air like a blade. This was the real test, the moment that would determine if their arrangement convinced or failed. Violet felt Harrison tense beside her, though his expression remained neutral. She could say something generic about his success or charm. Instead, she found herself speaking from an unexpected place of truth. "When lies become real, I love that he sees people," Violet said softly, surprising herself with the honesty in her words. "Not their usefulness or their status, but who they actually are. When we met, I was just a server who had ruined his expensive suit." He could have been angry or dismissive. Instead, he asked if I was hurt. "He saw me when I was invisible to everyone else in that room. That's rare, especially in his world." The words hung in the air, and Violet realized with growing panic that she meant every syllable. This was not performance. This was real. The shift between them. Harrison's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. When she glanced at him, the look in his eyes made her heart race. "Violet reminds me why I started my company," he said, his voice carrying unexpected vulnerability. "Not for money or power, but to create something meaningful. She has this way of cutting through pretense and seeing what actually matters. Being with her makes me want to be the man she believes I am." The silence that followed felt charged with something neither had anticipated. Hiroshi and Akiko exchanged meaningful glances, approval and consequences. "I see why this merger will succeed," Hiroshi finally said, a small smile playing at his lips. "You both understand that true strength lies in partnership, in seeing and valuing another person completely. Harrison-san, I believe we can finalize our agreement." As the men shook hands, sealing a $3 billion deal, Violet felt simultaneously triumphant and terrified. They had succeeded. The performance had worked, but the emotions stirring in her chest were not part of any contract she had signed. The dangerous ride home in the town car after dinner, tension crackled between them. Harrison had loosened his tie, and in the dim light filtering through the windows, he looked younger, more vulnerable. "You were perfect tonight," he said quietly. "Hiroshi completely believed us." Violet turned to face him, her heart pounding. "Harrison, what I said in there, I meant it. And that terrifies me, because this is supposed to be business. We're supposed to be pretending." His jaw tightened, and she saw her own confusion reflected in his eyes. "Crossing forbidden lines, I know," Harrison said, his voice rough. "But I haven't been pretending, Violet. Not since that first dinner. Maybe not since you crashed into my life with champagne and broken dreams and made me remember what it feels like to connect with someone real." He moved closer, his hand cupping her face with devastating gentleness. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is just a contract, just the arrangement. Because if you don't, I'm going to kiss you. And we both know that changes everything." The point of no return. Violet should have said stop, should have reminded them both about professional boundaries and emotional safety. Instead, she closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that felt like falling and flying simultaneously. Harrison's arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened. Years of loneliness and longing poured into that connection, the pretense they had maintained shattering completely. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads pressed together in the darkness of the car, facing the truth. This complicates everything, Violet whispered against his lips. Harrison's hands tangled in her hair, his thumb tracing her jaw. I don't care. I'm tired of pretending my feelings are part of some business strategy. You've gotten under my skin, Violet Monroe. I think about you constantly. When I'm in meetings, I'm wondering what you're doing. When I'm alone, I'm wishing you were there. This stopped being business the moment you looked at me like I was human instead of just a bank account. The risk of real love. Violet pulled back slightly, needing to see his face clearly. Harrison, I have nothing to offer you. No wealth, no connections, no influence in your world. I'm a broke former dancer who serves champagne to survive. What happens when this 6-month contract ends? When reality intrudes on whatever fantasy we're creating? The vulnerability in her voice made Harrison's expression soften. He had built an empire on calculated risks, but this woman represented a gamble his analytical mind could not process. Declarations in the dark. Then we figure it out together, Harrison said firmly. I've spent my entire adult life building something, achieving goals, accumulating wealth and power, but I've been empty, Violet, going through motions, checking boxes, never really feeling anything. You make me feel. You challenge me. You see past the money and the suits to the person I actually am. That's worth more than any merger or business deal. His words wrapped around her heart like silk. Dangerous and intoxicating. The morning and the truth is spent that night talking in Harrison's penthouse. The city lights sprawling below them like fallen stars. They shared secrets and dreams, fears and hopes. Violet told him about her father, who left when she was 5, about growing up poor, but rich in determination. Harrison spoke of the crushing loneliness of success, of relationships that felt transactional, of wondering if anyone would love him without his fortune. As dawn painted the sky pink and gold, they fell asleep on his couch, tangled together, like they belonged that way. When reality crashed, Violet woke to her phone buzzing insistently. The screen showed 15 missed calls from the nursing facility where her mother stayed. Her heart stopped as she answered. Harrison instantly alert beside her. Miss Monroe, your mother had another stroke during the night. She's stable now, but the doctors say she needs immediate surgery. Without it, the next stroke could be fatal. The words hit Violet like physical blows. How much? She asked, her voice hollow. $200,000. I'm sorry, but insurance won't cover it. The impossible choice. Harrison took the phone from her shaking hands, his expression hardening into the commanding businessman she had first met. This is Harrison Blake. I'll wire the funds immediately. Prepare for surgery as soon as possible and spare no expense. Bill everything to Blake Technologies. He rattled off account numbers and authorizations, while Violet sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. When he finished, he pulled her against his chest, his arms a fortress around her shaking body. She be okay, he murmured into her hair. I promise, she be okay. Gratitude and guilt. You didn't have to do that. Violet sobbed into his shirt. The contract said you'd cover medical expenses, but that's far more than we agreed. Harrison tilted her face up, his thumbs wiping away her tears. There is no contract anymore, Violet. Not in my heart. Your mother needs surgery, so she gets surgery. You need support, so I'm here. This isn't about money or arrangements. This is about taking care of the woman I'm falling in love with and the people she loves. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they felt like coming home. Standing together, they rushed to the hospital, where doctors confirmed her mother's condition was critical but treatable. The surgery would take hours, leaving them to wait in uncomfortable plastic chairs that felt worlds away from last night's luxury. Harrison never left her side, his hand steady in hers. Violet watched him make calls, rearranging his entire schedule without hesitation. This man who commanded billions moved mountains casually for her mother, a woman he had never met. Why are you doing this?" she asked during a quiet moment. Love beyond contract. Harrison looked at her with such intensity, it stole her breath. "Because 6 weeks ago, a beautiful woman crashed into my life and reminded me what it feels like to be human. Because every moment with you has stripped away the walls I built around my heart. Because when I imagine my future, you're in it, Violet, not as some contracted companion, but as my partner, my equal, my love. This is me choosing you, choosing us, regardless of any agreement we signed." The successful surgery. 8 hours later, the surgeon emerged with good news. The operation had been successful. Violet's mother would need extensive recovery and therapy, but she would survive. Violet collapsed in Harrison's arms, relief and exhaustion overwhelming her. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me back my mother." Harrison kissed the top of her head, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Thank you for giving me something worth fighting for beyond quarterly earnings and market shares. You've changed me, Violet Monroe." A new beginning. Weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits, physical therapy sessions for both Violet and her mother, and stolen moments with Harrison. The 6-month contract became irrelevant as their relationship deepened into something neither had expected. Harrison funded Violet's ankle surgery, attending every appointment and holding her hand through painful rehabilitation. She met his business partners and attended board meetings, offering fresh perspectives that surprised everyone, including Harrison himself. When two worlds merge 3 months after that first collision, in the rain of broken champagne glasses and scattered paintings, Harrison took Violet to the rooftop of his building at sunset. The city stretched below them, alive with possibility. "I have something to ask you," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Violet's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a ring that sparkled like captured starlight. "This isn't part of any contract. This is me, Harrison Blake, asking you, Violet Monroe, to be my partner in every sense of the word. Marry me. Build a life with me. Let's create something beautiful together." The answer written in stars. Violet looked at this man who had entered her life through accident and chaos, who had seen her when she was invisible, who had given her back her mother and her dreams. She thought about the journey from desperate server to cherished partner, from pretend girlfriend to real love. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, with all the joy bursting from her heart. "Yes, Harrison, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her into a kiss that promised forever, Violet realized that sometimes the best love stories begin with mistakes that awaken destiny. Epilogue. 1 year later, Violet stood in her own dance studio, teaching young girls the beauty of ballet. The space was a gift from Harrison, but she ran it independently, building something meaningful on her own terms. Her mother, fully recovered, visited weekly, delighting in her daughter's happiness. Harrison had learned to leave work at reasonable hours, prioritizing time with his wife over endless meetings. Together they had created a foundation supporting artists and medical care for families in need. On their wedding anniversary, surrounded by friends and love, they toasted to chance encounters and champagne collisions, to mistakes that awakened desire and became destiny. Their story proved that true love transcends social boundaries, that authentic connection matters more than wealth, and that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings emerge from unexpected chaos. Love had transformed them both, not by changing who they were, but by helping them become who they were meant to be all along. Together,